I love books. I love writers. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm an executive editor at Kensington Publishing, and so I'd like to know a little bit about you. Do we have some published authors here? Oh, very good. Writers who would like to be published authors? Oh. Even better. People who love books? Yes. Well, I've been in publishing for, let's just say, over 40 years. When I started my career, I was so excited to think that I would spend my life working on books. And to this day, I will say there's nothing more fun than working on books. What I didn't realize was that my publishing career was going to give me a chance to get to know so many really fabulous people. And the people side of the work has been just a wonderful and ongoing surprise to me as long as I have been in publishing. So I'll tell you a little bit about me, I'll tell you a little bit about Kensington, and then I will get to the submission and acquisition process at Kensington, and I'll even use examples of authors who are here, whose books I have acquired. So be ready when I call on you. Well, I grew up just doing nothing but reading books, and I read everything, and I didn't just stop with kids' books. My dad was a big fan of Mickey Spillane, and when my dad left the Mickey Spillane books in the bathroom, I would quickly grab them and take them into my bedroom and read them. I never went through the stage of reading Nancy Drew. It was always the tough stuff. So that explains a lot about my taste in thrillers these days. But I also work in many other genres. When I came to New York, I didn't really know that there was a world of careers in publishing. I just went through the New York Times and I got to the P section with the publishers, and I said, oh, look, here's a job where they pay you to read things. I could do that. So that's how I started my career. I have worked at about 5 different companies over the years, which is pretty unusual. Most people do a lot more job hopping. But when I get into something, I really like to see it through. So I was never one to look for greener pastures. I just wanted to see my projects through to the end. I've been at Kensington for 16 years. Kensington is the largest independent publishing company. You may hear people talk about the Big Five. Well, Kensington is number 6, and that is a very good position to be in, because Kensington is big enough to have a lot of market presence, but it's also small enough to be flexible and a really fun place to work. It is family-owned. The company was founded by a visionary, wonderful guy called Walter Zacharias about 45 years ago. And it started as the Zebra imprint, which is romance. And since then, we've added many new imprints, and we're still adding imprints, and we published much more than romance. In the early days, it was a mass market publisher. Now, the vast majority of our list is hardcover and trade paperback, but we're still in the mass market business. Of course, we've also branched out into ebook publishing. I would say, at present, we're publishing 500 new titles a year. That's a lot of books. We have about 10 editors, and each editor has certain areas of interest and expertise. There's some overlap. There's quite a few editors who do romance, because that's a big part of our list. There's also quite a few that are working in the thriller, mystery, suspense area. And we get along very well. We have editorial assistants, we have interns. Everybody has a lot of work to do. But one of the things that keeps us coming into the office with a smile every day is the idea that at any moment we might find something new and exciting. We're always looking for that. That's always a big motivation. At Kensington, our mission is to entertain. We greatly respect books that take on important social issues, exposés, works of serious philosophy, but we don't publish those. And every day I answer emails from people, and I have to say, I'm sorry, but your book is not a good fit at Kensington. It may be a great book for another house, but having a book fit at Kensington is the first question in my mind when I see a query letter. We are happy to deal with authors with or without agents. I would say that the majority of authors we publish do have agents, but we would never disregard a submission just because it doesn't come from an agent. It's just, if you have an agent, your agent is going to have a targeted submission plan to make sure that your book goes to the editors who are most likely to be interested at the houses that are most likely to publish your kind of book. If you're not using an agent and you're just doing a broad-based submission, most of the people who receive your query will have to say what I have said so often: it's just not a good fit here. So with or without an agent, you're welcome to knock on Kensington's door. There is a website, kensingtonbooks.com, and make sure that you have the word books as part of it, because somebody else is kensington.com. So at kensingtonbooks.com, you'll see something at the bottom that says for authors, and then it says submissions, and you click on that and it will take you to a page that has our submissions guidelines, and it also has a list of all of the editors and their areas of interest. It tells you what each editor is acquiring. Pick the one editor that seems like the best bet, and you can do further research on the editor to find out more about them beyond what's on the website. But please do not send a query or a partial manuscript or proposal to more than one editor, because chances are if you send it to more than one editor, none of them will answer you. They'll just say, oh, somebody else can deal with it. So just pick the one that seems right. We are acquiring all the time. We seek to build authors that we can publish repeatedly and continue to draw an audience for them. We often say we don't publish books, we publish authors. It's all about the authors. We really cherish our long-term relationships with authors that we've been publishing for many years. But at the same time, the market is always changing and our list is always changing. And so at different times we're looking for different kinds of books. So for the first 15 years I was at Kensington, I had to tell a lot of people that we don't publish science fiction and fantasy. Well, that all changed about a year ago when we decided that we would have an imprint for science fiction and fantasy. It's going to be an ebook imprint, so the books will be published as ebooks with print-on-demand editions available, which are trade paperbacks. And if that really takes off, then we'll have a print program. One of the nice things about ebook publishing is that you can experiment, and it's not at a high cost as it is in a print book program. So I can now tell people I'm looking for science fiction and fantasy, both of which, they're two genres that I've always loved. But I can only work on the books that we publish at Kensington. So the needs of the company are always changing, and we're always looking at what's working and what's not working. In recent years, cozy mysteries have been working like crazy. We're publishing, I think, 6 or 8 cozies a month in hardcover, in mass market, and in our ebook program. And they are really doing well. So we have an open to buy, cozies, science fiction. I'm also acquiring thrillers, traditional mysteries, psychological suspense, and I acquire nonfiction. Is anybody here writing nonfiction? Oh, good. Well, we do have a nonfiction program. We're one of the leading publishers in true crime. And also we have the Citadel imprint. of which I am the editor-in-chief, and Citadel is a nonfiction program. Our most notorious book was I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell by Tucker Max. I'm not going to ask if anybody has read it because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but let me tell you that 2 million people bought that book, so maybe there's somebody in this room. I can't complain because as gross as it is, that book has paid my salary, so we have to respect it. But we also publish more serious nonfiction books, medical books, popular reference, memoirs, various kinds. So it's a diversified list. I thought I would talk about the life of an editor. And I've already told you what gets us going in the morning. We're looking for something new and exciting. One thing about my job, there's always something new. And when people say, well, how's work? I can always say, well, it's great and terrible. There's always something great, and then there's always something terrible. But on balance, it's pretty great. The terrible part is if I have to give my author news that they don't want to hear. If I have to say, the book club's passed on your book, or the large print publishers don't think it's right, or if I have to say Barnes & Noble is taking your book as a regional buy instead of nationwide. It's not always good news. But when we get an audio sale, a large print sale, a great review somewhere, a great opportunity with one of the bookseller accounts, then I'm so happy to let the authors know. So our editors are tasked with acquiring the books that we're going to publish. So it's a very important tastemaker role that we have. And Kensington is a very category-driven company, meaning that we do not publish blended genres. We publish mystery, thriller, romance, Western, horror, science fiction. If I get a query letter and it says, my book blends mystery elements in a science fiction world with a romantic story driving the plot, I really can't do anything with that. And the first question I would have is, well, how do we package it? What we put on the cover is a signal to the reader that tells them what kind of book it is. And we like to be very honest about what kind of book it is and what they are going to expect when they open the covers. And so if we've got a lot of different genres in one book, well, which audience are we talking to? And where do we promote the book? Do we promote it through the science fiction channels or the mystery channels? Or, so we are very category driven in our fiction program. And since I love category fiction, I just think it's wonderful how every writer brings something new to the formula. So don't ever let it be said in a pejorative way, oh, he's a genre writer. That is the best thing you can be. When you write for a genre, you're writing for a specific audience, and that audience likes certain things. Cozy mystery fans like recipes. They like cats and dogs. They like gardening. They like knitting and quilting. We know that if we can give them those things in a cozy mystery, they're going to be interested. And the same is true of every genre. In the Westerns, what we found is the most violent titles sell the most copies. So a lot of our Westerns have titles like The Ambush of the Mountain Men, The Slaughter of the whatever. And we do put a lot of work into our titles. So for every editor, some of our time is spent on acquisitions, but most of our time is spent on the actual business of publishing the authors that we're already committed to publishing. So our life involves working with production, working with marketing, working with sales, giving everybody what they need to pull together the whole publishing process. Editors maintain a database about their books. A lot of it is kind of tech and routine, but it's all part of this series of communications that make sure that everybody has what they need for the book to be successful. So we do not read in the office. We do our reading at home at night and on the weekends. And, you know, if you think of an editor sitting at a desk with a pencil, that just doesn't happen. We're sitting at a desk with a keyboard and a computer screen, and we're answering hundreds of emails every day. We have many deadlines. Sometimes I tease my authors. I say, well, all you have to do is turn in the book. I then have a series of about 12 deadlines that have to do with the cover and the production of the book and our schedule of sales meetings and presentations. There are a lot more deadlines. And the author will be involved in some of them, which involve the copy-edited manuscript, the page proofs, the cover copy. We do like our authors to be part of the process. But it's my job to make sure that the authors are aware of the deadlines and aware of the consequences if we miss the deadlines, because there really are consequences. The period of time that leads up to publication is what we call the sell-in. That is the sell-in period. From the minute we buy the book, we're in the sell-in. The minute we buy the book, we start hyping it. Our sub-rights people start talking up the book to their accounts. Excuse me. The salespeople start getting the news about the book. There'll be some buzz about it. The acquisition will be announced in an email that comes out every day called Publisher's Lunch. People get interested in the book. And as soon as the deal is announced, we'll get calls from the audio people and the foreign publishers, and sometimes from the media. People are interested to know what's coming up. So from the minute we buy the book, we have to say, well, are we really sure this is the title? Because if we announce it and people start to expect it, we might get locked into it. So if it's not really the title, then we have some work that we would have to undo. So a lot happens just from the time of acquisition. At Kensington, we do have an open door policy for unsolicited and unagented submissions. However, don't ever send anything in paper anymore. It goes nowhere. It's much better to use the email route for submissions. You need to have a really good pitch for your book. There are books devoted to the subject of how to pitch your book. There are many conferences like this one where you can have an intensive program of refining your pitch. You need to have a good pitch. When I read a pitch, my first question is, what kind of book is it? And is that a kind of book that we publish at Kensington? And if it's something that we don't publish, if it's a historical novel about the Napoleonic Wars, about a military figure, I know it wouldn't fit at Kensington because it's just not what we publish. There's just some things where I have to say no. I also need to know up front how long the thing is, because I don't want to be in a trap where I say, okay, I'll look at it, and then it's 150,000 words, which is, I don't have time in my life to read that. It's just not possible. For different genres, we have different lengths that we're looking for. For a cozy mystery, it could be 60 to 80,000 words. For a thriller, it would be more like 80 to 100,000 words. So I'm looking for things that are the right length. Sometimes people say they've written a book and it's 30,000 words, but it's just not a book. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's not a book. People send us queries for children's books, which we don't publish, children's picture books, which we really don't publish, books of photography, which we don't publish. It really helps if I have the sense that the person who's sending me a query has done a little bit of homework. at least they could go to our website and see the kind of books that we're featuring as our main titles of the month, the featured titles. So my response to a query could be long or short, basically depending on how much respect the query really commands. And recently I had a query for a true crime book that sounded really interesting, but after a little dialogue with the author, I realized that the crime took place in Canada, and we can't publish true crime that's set in Canada because they have a different legal system, and every nonfiction book we publish has to have a legal read, and we're not going to hire two attorneys, one for the US market and one for Canada. So I can't really work with a Canadian setting in true crime. So she would be better served to contact a Canadian publisher. And I didn't mind having a little conversation with her because she was clearly going down the right path. You know, she'll get somewhere with that book. It was a very good query. And sometimes people will just send their manuscript as an email and not even say anything in the email. And I think that's actually rude because we do not open any attachments from people we don't know because of viruses. And, you know, if I read a good query, I sometimes have a few questions for the author. For instance, if an author queries me about a thriller and it sounds like it's got the ingredients that I like, I probably would ask them if they belong to ITW, MWA, have you attended any writers' conferences, do you belong to any writers' groups? I need to know more about the author. So if you're sending a query to a publisher, don't be shy about talking about yourself because so much depends on the author. It's not just the book, it's the author too. I'm always interested to know if it's fiction, is this the first book in a series? Do you see it as the first book in a series? I have to know if it was previously published in any format, because unfortunately, if it was previously published, we just can't consider it. Even though I personally admire the initiative of anyone who self-publishes, the track record of the book in its self-published edition would work against any kind of marketing that we would try to do for it as part of Kensington. So if somebody contacts me and says, well, I've self-published this book and it sold X number of copies and I have 150 glowing reviews on Amazon, I have to say that's really great, enjoy your success, and if you decide to write a new book for which you're seeking a traditional publisher, you're welcome to contact me again, but I can't touch the self-published book. But as Jeff Deaver was saying this morning, if you're going to be a writer, plan to write a lot of books. Don't stop at one. If one book doesn't work out, move ahead and write the next one. You know, if you really love writing, the idea of a publisher opening their door to your next book should be intriguing. And that's an opportunity. And what I really love is when people say to me, what kind of a book could I write for you that you're looking for now? And that is a question I'm always happy to answer. And it comes from authors who've been published many times and won awards, and they need a fresh start somewhere. And so that's led to some good conversations. But if it's you know, somebody who seems to have written something, you know, pretty good, but there's no way that it fits at Kensington, you know, I can say, you know, start a new series, look at what we publish, see if you can come up with a character that would be strong enough and interesting enough and vulnerable enough that you would put them through the plot of a whole series of books. You know, think about the readers for the different genres. What can you give those readers that they haven't had before? There's a way to move forward. And, you know, no is not always the last word in a conversation. But, so whenever possible, I like to say, well, not this time, but maybe maybe something else. So since I have a couple of my authors in the room, I'd just like to tell the story of how their books were acquired. Just so you know, every book we acquire goes through the editorial meeting. We have it almost every week. And the editors meet with Steve Zacharias, who's the owner and CEO at Kensington, and our publisher, Lynn Cully, and our marketing and publicity directors, and all of the editors. And we just go around the table, and we start with the question, did anybody buy anything last week? Well, as an editor, you're motivated to say, I did a 3-book deal with, whatever. You want to have that moment. And then we go around the table and people talk about what they found. We also have ideas. When the show Hamilton came out, one of our editors said, we should do a book about Eliza Hamilton, a novel, a historical novel, because she had such an interesting life, and it would really be of interest to people now. So we talked about that at the editorial meeting, and the editor got an enthusiastic reception. So she went to an agent and she said, do you have somebody who can do a really great book about Eliza Hamilton, fairly quickly? And she connected with the right agent, and the book was done, and it just got a starred PW review. So it was not my book, but I'm very happy for my colleague, Wendy McCurdy. And that started with an idea. And also we were talking about cozy mysteries just this week, and most of them involve cats or dogs. But one of the editors is going to be working on a series in which the protagonist has rabbits. So we started talking about other genres, other interests that would appeal to the cozy audience. And I said, well, the people who have ferrets are really passionate about them. And so that means that I'm looking for a ferret-based cozy mystery series. So there's a lot of brainstorming in a very friendly atmosphere. So we do have the meeting, and sometimes at the meeting the outcome is offer X amount of money and see what happens. And sometimes at the meeting, maybe Steve or Lynn or one of the other people will want to read it. Now, that is more true for nonfiction. But, it's usually, within a week or two we have a decision, and then we decide what kind of an offer to make. Not every author gets the same offer. We negotiate. We respect what agents ask for whenever possible. Let's face it, an author who's not well known is not going to get as big an advance as somebody who has a built-in audience. So, we try to be fair. We like to see books earn out their advances. We love to pay royalties. So we bid on books, and mostly we get them, and sometimes the negotiation does not succeed for whatever reason. Maybe the agent is looking for more money and thinks they can get it elsewhere, or there could be some technicality in the negotiation. We have boilerplate contracts with every major agency, and we're always ready to deal with somebody new. So most of it works out. Most of our submissions do come from agents. Most of our acquisitions come through agents, but as I said, not all of them. And we just respect the author's decision. Every week the submissions pour in, and every editor is constantly deluged. Nobody could possibly read all of those books. So we have to really decide which ones we're going to read. And, when you think that all the reading gets done in the evenings and weekends, I also want to have a life. So an editor has to be pretty picky. I have my assistant do a first read on anything that sounds promising. If something just doesn't sound right, I just have to say it's not going to work here. And I try to express that in the most polite way that I can. So before the advent of the Kindle, I traveled through life with a backpack full of paper, usually weighing between 20 and 40 pounds, as I was constantly reading manuscripts everywhere. Thank goodness for the Kindle. I can now read my submissions on the Kindle. Actually, I read them on my phone, so it's not a heavy burden to carry around. So I do have my favorite agents who send me good stuff, and I can count on them. The editors and the agents develop a working relationship over the course of years, and when certain agents send me something, I really trust them that they're sending me something I'll probably like and that would probably fit very well at Kensington. So I'll take the example of John Gilstrap. Now, John, you chime in if I don't tell the story in every accurate detail. But our CEO, Steve Zacharias, is a fan of thrillers, and he read one of John's books and he really liked it. And he went to one of your signings, right?
In 1996. First book.
And so I guess you guys talked, and that didn't lead to Kensington immediately becoming your publisher. But the time came when John's agent sent a manuscript to Steve, and Steve gave it to me to read, and we both really loved it. And notice that Steve is really very involved in everything that we do. He is a great, great boss. And so we signed up, I think, the first 3 Jonathan Grave thrillers at that point.
After 6 Minutes. 6 Minutes of Freedom was the first Kensington book.
Oh, 6 Minutes of Freedom. That was first?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that was a terrific nonfiction book.
Gene somebody was my agent.
Gene Brissy.
Gene Brissy was my agent.
Gene Brissy, yes. He was the editor. I forgot that came first. See, I'm glad you're here to correct me. That was a nonfiction book about a man named Kurt Muse, who had worked against Manuel Noriega in Panama and was imprisoned there and was rescued by Delta. The only American
At that point, right?
yeah, ever rescued by Delta. It was truly a nonfiction book that read like a thriller. And it's making its way to the big screen, so remember the title, 6 Minutes to Freedom. So then I guess we started with the Jonathan Grave series. So that was, a fairly traditional way for a book to get into our list. That Steve was a fan, he met you, the agent was aware of his interest. And so, what are we on now, book 10?
I will be handing you book 11 next week.
I can't wait. So, sitting near John is Bernard Schaefer. He is new to the Kensington list, and he also has an agent. His agent had sent me something, and I can't remember what it was, but it just wasn't right for Kensington. Time out. And I didn't know her. So I said, well, I'm sorry this isn't right, but why don't we have lunch and talk about what we like and what I could be interested from your list. So we had a nice lunch. Sorry. And lo and behold, she sent me Bernard's book, and it was really fantastic. It was really, really fantastic. So I brought it up at the editorial meeting, and I said to Steve, do you want to read it? He said, sure. And he's a quick reader. I think within a couple of days, he said, it's great, let's get it for hardcover. So we did. So Bernard's book will be coming out next August, and it is really a fabulous thriller with police characters that you will never forget, a killer who surpasses Hannibal Lecter in many ways, and I mean that as a compliment. You probably have seen Jonathan Mayberry here at the conference. He's going to be giving the keynote speech at dinner. I acquired his first 3 books, which are what we now call the Pine Deep Trilogy. And it was shortly after I came to Kensington. An agent sent me the manuscript, and that was a big fat paper manuscript. And I carried that baby on the train. I was going out to Harrisburg from New York. And I read it on the train, and I read it, and I read it all weekend, and I just kept reading. And the whole time I was reading it, I was thinking, I can't believe they pay me to do this. It was so good. I just felt like this was the ultimate privilege in my life, that I would be one of the first people to read this incredible book. And so I guess I should have thought it through before I went into the editorial meeting, because I said how good the book was, and it was really a perfect fit at Kensington. And I said, I just can't believe that I get paid to read things like this. And my boss at the time said, well, we could change that. But that was great. We signed up the 3-book trilogy, and I think we published Ghost Road Blues in '96, and then in 2016 we started doing all 3 of the books one at a time. We put them into trade paperback, because one of the things that's happened in the last 15 years is the erosion of mass market distribution. You've probably experienced this in your area. There are fewer bookstores. The bigger stores like Walmart and Target and Kmart, they're giving less space to books than they used to. It's what we call less rack space. Where do we put these books if we print them? There are just not as many retail outlets for them. So at the same time that's happened, more people are buying what we used to call mass market type of books in trade paperback. So that's, one door closes, another door opens. You have to be pretty creative to work it out, but there's always a way to work it out. So we have our editors, we have our mandates, we have our areas of interest, we have Kensington with its various strengths that we try to build up. And the reason I'm here is, of course, to hang out with some of the fabulous people who love books as much as I do, but also just to get the word out about Kensington. 5 minutes. And let you know that there is an open door, but really it is, I'd say 1 in 1,000 chance that a submission that's sent to us will actually be acquired. However, at the same time, we need fresh blood, the machine needs new talent. The world is always interested in the words new and exciting. They don't really want to know about something they've heard about again. So if we don't have fresh talent and fresh books, then we're not completing our mission. So since we have 5 minutes, let's have some questions if you have any. Yes, sir.
Yeah. In hearing even Jonathan talk about platform and having a Twitter and Facebook and all that, from Kensington's point of view, you guys have a relationship, that's one of the deciding factors that you have if someone has...
That's one of the questions that I have to ask up front. What is your website? What is your social media presence? I don't mind if you're starting from ground zero and you don't have any, because we have a social media team. They take our authors from ground zero and turn them into pros.
Okay.
But we just need to know what's your starting point. If an author already has a following, that's great. If you don't yet, we have other strategies. We help you get a following. And it's actually a lot more important for a nonfiction author to have a built-in platform.
I see.
But in fiction, It's much more about the book and what we can do with it.
As a follow-up question to that, just sort of vetting some of the things I've heard at other conferences, how cautious should I be as a fiction writer of putting anything from the work that I'm looking to propose on any of those sites? Have I compromised your decision-making process to say, no, you've already put some of it out there and we really can't do business?
The question is it a plus or a minus if you've already posted part of your book in social media or on a website?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just part of the book, that would not be a problem.
Okay.
In fact, that could be like a little marketing opportunity to see what the
Not a
feedback
problem.
is.
Interesting.
But if the whole book has been posted,
Right.
we can't really do anything.
From your perspective, do you think other houses have that same point of reference, or are they more risk-averse when it comes to that type of thing?
He's asking me if other houses would feel the same. I honestly don't know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir?
Hi, you said your science fiction fantasy imprint is ebook only. If a novel is published as an ebook, would you reprint it if that grew and into printed novels as well?
The question is, if we published a book as an ebook and it was very successful, would we do a print edition? That's a really good question, and some agents have asked me that also. I think what we would probably do if the first book was, let's say we sign up a series, we often do a 3-book deal. If the first book is really successful, we would want to see that success repeated with at least the second book and maybe even the third book. We would really like to know that it's a solid level of support. And then we would talk about either moving the series into print for books 4, 5, and 6, or maybe starting a new series with the author, which we would do in print, but possibly continue the first series as an ebook series, because clearly that's where the fans have found the book. We don't want to disappoint the fans. If they're supporting your book as an ebook, then we should continue to give them the opportunity to buy it as an ebook. So in our Cozy Mystery program, we have an author named Lynn Cahoon, and she's done very well in the ebook program. And so we started publishing her in the print program, but it's a new series. And she still does the ebook program for us. So it's a question that we would have to take one book at a time. And there could be compelling reasons to put a book into print after it's been an ebook. But we would first seek to do a proprietary deal. And what that is that we would go to someone like Walmart or maybe Barnes & Noble, and we would say, we have this book. It's really blowing away as an ebook. It's never been in print. We will give you the chance to have it exclusively for 6 months. And then Walmart has an exclusive edition of the book in print in its 3,500 stores. And then after that point, we'd be free to sell the print edition to other outlets. But we're always looking to work with the accounts, and for an author to have that kind of support from a major account, that's like priceless. When you have a proprietary deal with one of the big distributors, if that really sells for them, oh, they're going to be so good to you in the future. So there's a lot of different strategies that we would bring into play if an ebook is successful. Yes?
2 things. One, sometimes you hear the phrase that a new author isn't ready for hardcover, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And I'd also like to know about sometimes their product placements in books that certain authors are able to get, and how you feel about having that in a book. Like a character's driving a certain car or...
The question is the meaning of the phrase, not yet ready for hardcover, and also about product placement in books. I think that the phrase not ready for hardcover is backwards. I think it's more a question of the hardcover audience isn't ready for the book or for the author. We're always trying to determine where an audience is. if an audience is supporting a book in a particular format, that's our audience. And then if you change format, you risk losing some of the people who are fans, because they might have been willing to pay a certain price, but maybe not the hardcover price, which is like $26 or $28 these days. That's a lot. So I think it's kind of a spurious phrase, not ready for hardcover. I think that that's just a way of saying something else, that it's not the right fit for the market, basically. And as for product placement, I have no experience with it, and I have no evidence that it works in books. I know that it works in movies. And now I have to stop. She gave me the stop sign. But I will be available for conversations during the book signing hour. I'll be around. I'll be, of course, as everyone says, I'll be in the bar after dinner. I welcome the chance to talk one-on-one. Thank you so much.